All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I love it. We are on. I love my Tuesday recorded audience. You are all so lovely. Thank you for being here so dutifully every Tuesday. Kim is also here dutifully. Kim, how are you? She is perhaps the most dutiful to be here. And then Tony is wondrously presenting himself. We are at full strength, everyone. That's right. Damage will be done. The great Pulitzer Prize winner David Cay Johnston joins us in hour 2. I've got a terrific conversation that I had about a story out of the Civil War. A kidnapped free man who then is forced into servitude on a Confederate sea vessel. That's where the legend becomes butted up against fact. And this amazing, I'd only faintly heard about this story. It's a fascinating story, and for the first time, it's been impeccably researched by an author who's written a book called Kidnapped at Sea. It's a great story, and you'll hear it only here on this show, and we'll do that today as well. I also might mention the fact that the country's in a free fall when it comes to scooping up people and putting them on planes and sending them to different parts of the world. We'll talk about the immigration policy, where it sits, what is happening. There are a lot of legal immigrants who are being affected by the crackdown on illegal immigrants because there's a problem at the Social Security Administration with numbers and with Social Security numbers changing, et cetera. I'll get to that. And I do want to pick up on something that I talked about yesterday. And again, I just think this is a huge story. And once again, I think it's essentially being orphaned by the mainstream media. And that is this data collection on private citizens. Yeah. The Palantir deal that I told you about yesterday, it is getting out there, but it needs real media oxygen. So I will visit it with David Cay Johnston. And if you missed it yesterday, I'll just summarize it by saying Palantir is a huge data collection crew. It's founded, I believe, by Peter Thiel, and he co-founded it, I think. And it comes out of that whole world of Thiel and Sachs and those guys who the PayPal bros. But leave that aside. That in itself isn't damnable. What's damnable is that the country has turned over the keys to our databases as citizens to Palantir. And they want to centralize a database across a bunch of different government agencies, all of which have information about you. Yeah. You have a profile across all these different things. You have a profile at Social Security, you have a profile at IRS, you have a profile, as you know, through social media. Well, all of those things, I mean, including your social media profile, are going to begin to live in a central file database that is run by Palantir. Now, Palantir, sorry, go ahead, Kim, what?
I know what's at the top of your file. Does not like Trump. That's at the very top.
Well, I'm not a fan. And look, It's not personal. I wish he'd go back to being a rich playboy and not run the country. That's all. I mean, I got nothing against Trump himself. It's just the horror that he's wrought, you know, and the people that he's hired, you know, the best people. As it turns out, you know, we have rank amateurs who are making a mess of everything. But the one thing Trump does is, you know, if he likes you, he'll just give you the keys to the kingdom. That's what he did with Elon Musk. He was so in the thrall of Elon Musk, and Elon Musk, of course, had purchased the presidency for Donald Trump. Not to say that the charisma and the clever way in which Donald Trump packaged his hate of the same things that a lot of Americans hated, things they were frustrated with. Not to say that wasn't effective, but you needed that to be supercharged with big money, and hundreds of millions of dollars did it, and that's what Donald Trump got from Elon Musk. And so Musk, when he, really before even day one, when he began to ride shotgun with Donald Trump, he was given the keys to that kingdom, and he scraped the databases of Americans. We don't know what's going to happen with that, but we do know what's happening with Palantir. And again, I'll mention it to David Cay Johnston. Didn't mean to get off on this whole thing right now, but we do know what essentially will be a huge database affecting all of us. All Americans will be in this database, and Palantir will keep it. Palantir has been really useful. And I keep saying the name Palantir because I want you to get familiar with Palantir. I know people go, Palantir, what the hell is Palantir? I mean, we're used to hearing about X, and you're hearing about AI and ChatGPT. Palantir helps particularly and has huge government deals when it comes to immigration and when it comes to crackdowns on immigration and illegal immigration. So even AI associated with Palantir is helping the administration with illegal immigration movements, where people might be. And as you know, this administration has really made a priority out of cracking down on not only violent criminals, as they said, but on people who are working here, going to school here, going to church here. The most recent example, that kid who's an honor student, you saw that, Kim?
He's on his way to soccer practice?
Yeah, on his way to soccer practice. He's an honor student. He's been here since he was 6 years old. They scoop him up. These ICE agents, these Gestapo-like agents scoop him up. And now he's in a detention center. It's outrageous. These are the people you're getting rid of? An honor student who's been here since he was 6 years old? And then when asked to comment on it, DHS said, well, he wasn't actually specifically on our list, but we
didn't mean it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just like the guy that they've sent to El Salvador that the Supreme Court has said they should bring back. And we have a story on that today as well. So we have a follow-up on that.
I'm uneasy with the comparison of ICE to Gestapo agents, and it's because I see them as law enforcement agents. Like, I see them as they've got a job to do. You know, they're supposed to enforce the laws of immigration. And I don't know if they're bad people. But then again, you see these images of them now wearing the black hoods so they can't be identified. And it is very scary. So I'm kind of in a gray area with my feeling toward what's going on with that.
I understand that. I mean, I'm sure that there are ICE agents who are, want to do their job well and want to do it in a more humanitarian, if I can use the word, kind of fashion. But the style and edict that has been handed down by DHS and the way in which they're doing it, it reminds me of Gestapo-like tactics. Kick open the door, throw everybody down, zip tie mom, zip tie dad, I mean, you can see how it's unnecessarily cruel.
Yeah.
And in that way, it's not a perfect parallel, but that's why I say Gestapo. So Chaplain Fred says, here's $99.99. I'm calling it $100. Wow. This is a super chat right out of the chute. He says, hi, Mark. So sorry I missed a few days of your show. I've been following Mexico's judicial and federal elections for new judges. This is very interesting. This is very, I'll follow up on this in a second. The people went voting for new judges instead of having the president appoint them. Yeah, I was just about to say that. It has been an awesome turnout nationwide. Yeah, thank you, Chaplain Fred, and thank you for the, a big shout out to you.
Big shout out.
Thank you for the $100 super chat. And also thank you for pointing to something that has changed in Mexico. So what's happened, in 10 seconds or less, they used to appoint the judges. The president did. Now the judges are elected. And the reason that potentially is a good thing is that you had a lot of cronyism before in Mexico. You had a lot of corruption in the judicial system. It was all friends of the president, people who mobbed up that way. Now they go to a vote, and you can still say there are flaws with that system, but it seems as though at least it turns over, it would appear, to the people, the decisions as to who will be on the judicial bench. That's what's happening in Mexico. Mexico has a wonderful president, says Myra. Yeah.
This is Claudia Sheinbaum, the president, who made judicial reform a component of her agenda in order to cramp down on the Mexican cartel criminals.
Right.
And so this is the first country in the world now to elect all of its judges.
It's really something. I mean, an extraordinary change. I mean, that's the kind of thing that, she's steadying the ship of state in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum is, but she's also making some of these truly watershed changes, like this change in the judicial system. I mean, contrast that to her friends north of the border, the United States. The U.S. has put a new administration in charge, and they have radically changed everything, and they are not maintaining the general ship of state in the same direction, right? That's why you see markets roiled. That's why you see consumers anxious. That's why you have all of a sudden a total stoppages at the ports for certain goods. It's because things have been so radically destabilized. It's fascinating to me how Donald Trump, who's supposed to be this business guy, we know it was all illusory. We know that was really, he's an actor. He's an actor / game show host / media personality, and he's taken over, but effectively built the profile of himself as a successful businessman to the point that Americans frustrated with a system that leaves them out already. I mean, that's just the way the system's set up. It's full of corruption because it is full of money. And so the American political system will leave average Americans out because average Americans don't have what? They don't have money. And it's a system of patronage. If you contribute enough to these politicians' coffers to get them reelected, and it goes into a war chest, it goes into their foundation employs their family, etc., then you'll get the results you'll need. You'll get that new project approved or whatever it might be. You'll get deregulation. But if you don't have that kind of money, then you're just really at the mercy of whatever direction the country is going in. So that's our system in contrast. And look, don't get me wrong, Mexico is insanely corrupt, and they have a bunch of drug cartels that are running whole parts of the country. Please don't misunderstand me. I'd much prefer to be in the U.S. than in Mexico. No question about it. But I'm just describing the way in which she's trying to bring about radical change for the positive while also maintaining the ship of state. Whereas I feel like Donald Trump is one of those kids, you see these 8-year-old kids who get on the elevator and they press all the buttons. Like they're 32 floors and they go, bup, 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 bup. They don't even know what they're doing. They just like pressing the button and it lights up. That's what Trump is doing with America. He's pressing all the buttons. I would have told him, don't touch any of the buttons. Dude, you're inheriting the very best economy in the world right now. Don't touch anything. Go out there, make statements in the Rose Garden. You're angry at the Democrats and Joe Biden and Sleepy Joe, whatever. That's great. Do that all. Just don't touch anything policy-wise. America is more corrupt and Mexico is less corrupt. We are in the twilight zone. Yeah, Peter. I think that might be the direction we're going. That's for sure. Jefferson Graham joins us also in hour 2. I should mention that. That's happening also. The big, beautiful bill, Kim. Let me just mention what's happening with the big, beautiful bill, because
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's definitely big. I'm not sure how beautiful it is. And it does appear that to get it through the Senate with minimal changes, Donald Trump is pressing the flesh. He worked the phones yesterday, took to social media to try to sway Republican holdouts on his multi-trillion-dollar tax bill. Of course, this is to extend the Trump tax cuts. And he's getting conflicting demands, as it's reported, from GOP senators, even as he urges them to move swiftly. He passed the House by 1 vote, faces opposition from moderates and, of course, the ultra-conservatives in the Senate who don't want to see this deficit blown up. He can afford to lose no more than 3 votes in the Senate. And he said this on Truth Social, the Bible for all of MAGA. With the Senate coming back to Washington today, I call on all my Republican friends in the Senate and House to work as fast as they can to get this bill to my desk before the 4th of July. Yeah, that's a good point. You want this bill done before the big military parade. When is that, Kim? That's soon, though.
June, is it 14th? I don't know.
Not going to make it. It's not going to make it. No.
I was reading an article about how much it's going to cost to repair the streets after all the tanks roll through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. I think I want to say that Washington, D.C. is still waiting to be reimbursed for Trump season 1 when he had the big. Remember, there was a huge event, season 1 of Donald Trump.
Well, what do we know about that? Don't hold your breath for the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to town.
Oh, is it time?
I'm just having some coffee. Sorry, I really do need it today.
Yeah.
And having it in my, we could try ignoring it, sir, mug, which is available at GetMark.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
Well, that was loud.
I've
We
got
could
the-
try ignoring it, sir, mug. Yeah, what's that?
I've got the mango iced tea.
Oh,
I've kind of switched over. It's
tango
very
with
summer.
the mango.
Tango
Yeah.
with the mango. It's good. I like it a lot.
It is such good product. I really recommend it. I am going to just take one more. You too. You don't have to drink it out of our Mark Thompson Show mug, but if you do want one, it's at getmarkmerch.com. I will tell you that Coachella Valley Coffee is what we drink on this show. They're great supporters of the show. You should support them. It's a boutique roastery. So this isn't some discount roastery. This is a boutique roastery. Everything is hand roasted, sourced from women-owned farms across Latin America, across Africa. They're amazing. Cliff and the guys there, and I meant guys generically, men and women who do the work at Coachella Valley Coffee are just terrific. And you, as a Mark Thompson Show viewer/listener, get a discount. Mark T at checkout gives you 10% off. And you can get anything you want. As Kim mentioned, they've got teas, coffee, spices, anything you want, 10% off at checkout. So definitely check them out, and you'll be happy. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I instead of talking about losing our privacy rights, as Phineas says, you have a big voice. Use it. Use your 119,000 followers to spread the word and the power of your voice. Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's why we talk about it. But losing these privacy rights, I see. He wants people who are founders of the California privacy law on as guests.
Mm-hmm.
We'll follow up on that. Kim, can you jot down those names and maybe we can rally some of those people? If you'll jot down, I'll have other people rally. That's the best deal I can give you. So you don't need to rally them. You just need to jot down the names.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to at least follow up on that. By the way, speaking of, and then I want to get back to this big, beautiful bill thing, just to tell you what it's going to bloat the budget incredibly. Bloat the deficit, I should say. The Friday show has Dr. Daigneault coming through again with a segment that we call Vital Signs. He covers a lot of medical news. He covers vaccine news, all the changes at the CCDC and CCDC at the CDC and NIH. And any questions that you have for him, you can lob into me now, and I'll try to integrate them into our conversation on Friday. So I want to give you a lot of time. It's themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. You can send me a note at that address, and I'll try to work it in. It's themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Of course, you can send me any kind of thought on anything, but specifically, I want to try to integrate your questions for Dr. Daigneault. Here it is. As we begin, let me just spend a moment on the big, beautiful bill.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There's a basic rule of thumb when it comes to the federal budget. The government should spend heavily during times of crisis, recessions, wars, pandemics, and then get its fiscal house in order when the crisis passes. So it is noted in a piece from the New York Times that speaks to where we're headed. The tax and spending bill passed by the House totally turns that rule on its head. Trillions added to the debt. Unemployment is low. The economy is solid by most measures. It's what I've been saying to you for a while. That's going to make it much harder for the government to come to the rescue in the next downturn because they are using all of their political capital and fiscal capital on this. They're expected to take up this bill in the Senate. It would extend most of the tax cuts enacted during President Trump's first term, or as we call it on this show, the President Trump Season 1 offering. It would add billions of dollars in new tax breaks for tipped workers, business owners, and other groups. It would cut spending. But it's not cutting spending nearly as much. The total that the bill is going to add is trillions to the national debt over the next decade. So that comes on top of a sea of red ink that is near record levels in recent decades. Of course, we've dealt with pandemics and other huge expenditures. We had strong economic growth in 2000. Spending cuts under President Bill Clinton, the federal debt load was about a third the size of the annual economic output. Since then, decades of tax cuts, spending increases, and now this measure of the debt burden, as noted here, has roughly tripled to about 100% of GDP. That's the highest level since World War II. And at a rate of growth that experts across the political spectrum say is unsustainable. So we are kind of entering a crisis period. An economist at the University of California at Berkeley, David Romer, who has studied the impact of government deficits, says, I'm extraordinarily concerned about the fiscal implications of all of this. We're starting from high levels of debt, high levels of deficits, projected growing budgetary pressure from an aging population, and the investors are already jittery about this. So this is not just hypothetical, he says. A lot of economists fall into this category, that investors are going to balk at lending the government money. They're going to demand huge interest rates if they do lend the government money. You know, understand when we say lending the government money, we're talking about buying bonds. So now you're going to be paying these bondholders huge interest rates, and you see how this just spirals. The interest rates add further to the debt. Investors are, because of the growing debt, more reluctant to lend, and eventually, government borrowing goes up, up, up. So economists are all warning on this, that increasing the debt during a period of relative economic strength is running the risk that the tipping point is going to come at the worst possible moment when the government needs to run large deficits to respond to a war or another pandemic. Already, the federal government, you know this, spends more each year on interest on the debt than it does on national defense. So if the House bill becomes law, federal debt could exceed 125% of GDP by 2034. That would be the highest ever in America.
You know what else is in the big, beautiful bill? I didn't realize this. De Hagval says there's a provision to prevent any regulation of AI for 10 years. And so I did some searching, and De Hagval's right. 10 years, a decade, and we can't regulate AI?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, this idea that there shouldn't be regulation of any kind, that they just want to get rid of all this burdensome regulation. I mean, and this is the way they package this. How would you like AI and technology to flourish if you're going to regulate them all the time? You've got to get rid of these burdensome regulations. These are protections. You want AI running amok? You've already seen what happens when one of these tech bros busts into the government and decides to shake up the snow globe. That was Elon Musk. He dismantled huge parts of government, vital parts of government. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead now as a result of cutting off USAID programs. They're dead. And the beauty of America, the essence of America, the wondrous part of America that we do fund so many programs for famine relief, for disease relief, those wondrous parts of America are gone because that guy went in there and cut a program that's like a rounding error. It's so little, but he cut USAID because USAID was on the back of Elon Musk. There were regulatory pressures from USAID for his companies. Same was true at EPA. That's why he went after these agencies. Now, I think they likely would have cut these agencies anyway, but why did he make them top priorities, Elon Musk? Because it was a personal vendetta, if you will. He wanted to get them off his back. He wanted that regulatory aspect to those agencies to end, at least as far as he was concerned. But so anyway, back to AI. The idea somehow that these guys of the sort, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, these guys who have tremendous power with these technologies that are so much at the essence now of the future of government that they go unregulated. It's chilling. It's really chilling. That AI would be unregulated is chilling. And this is true. It grants put that back up there. That's true. A Northern Tier FPV says it grants the executive branch judicial immunity. They snuck that one in too. There's a bunch of stuff snuck in. That's right. So any judicial injunction, for example, on the president's power, that has been snuck into the bill. That does not apply to the executive branch. So there are a lot of these things that have been embedded in this big, beautiful bill that aren't directly related to any sort of fiscal policy. They're related to governmental policy. And so there are a lot of examples like this. And again, the reason this bill is endangered is not because of that. It's because of budgetary considerations. The reason like a Rand Paul is against it isn't because of that stuff. It's because he feels it's going to bloat this deficit. There's no question it's going to bloat the deficit. I just ran through all the numbers for you. So, then you get to Medicare, then you get to all of these, what they call entitlement programs, and you see all the damage that can be done. So I'm not sure the future of the big, beautiful bill. I mean, it is in the Senate, but I also know Trump is a threatening figure. Politically threatening. Were his causes more righteous, that would be a great thing. He gets on the phone like LBJ used to. And LBJ used to get those votes. He'd call senator by senator.
Down the list.
And now Trump is doing that, leaning on all of these legislators in a big way. And Musk, as you know, is someone who has not been apologetic in the least about his feelings about this big, beautiful bill. And he said, hey, this is antithetical to what I was doing. Now, as well as I do, and we talked about the fact that what he was doing, in addition to being reckless and awful, just from the standpoint of the chaos it created and how vital government agencies and vital employees of government were dismissed, it also, the idea was to save money. It's all this, waste, fraud, and abuse crap. They raise that flag of waste, fraud, and abuse. We're doing this for waste, fraud, and abuse. We've got to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. Are you telling me that you don't back an effort to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse? Yeah, except you're not doing that. You're just closing down government agencies and government programs where there is no real waste, fraud, and abuse. So Musk's ethic, Musk's stated goal was to do that. And so in response to that, now he's saying, hey, your big bloated budget doesn't do that. Now we know, again, as an aside, I would just say, we know that Musk didn't do that either, but that was the flag he was flying. But he's saying, you guys are bloating this deficit to the point that it just is against everything that we were working for. So Republicans now are pushing back on that criticism because that criticism had gone out there. And this tax cut that will be extended and Medicaid and other things that are on the table, those are all things that they are busting back on Musk for flagging. Representative Darren LaHood from Illinois said that Musk, who complained about the bill increasing the budget deficit, doesn't know what he's talking about. I would disagree with Elon in the sense that he doesn't understand how the tax bill works. This is going to be a rocket fuel for the economy. Is that right? It'll be rocket fuel for the richest economy, the elite economy, those people who need that tax cut. The bill calls for $4 trillion or more in tax cuts and increased spending, but less than $2 trillion in spending cuts. That's where it all sits. I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, Musk said, I should say, which increases the budget deficit, not just decreases it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing. He didn't say anything about how legislation is going to cut benefits for the poor to finance tax cuts for the rich. He just made...
He doesn't care about that.
Right. He's just talking about the numbers, not penciling out. So
What's
that's,
interesting is the
yeah.
minute he said this, it really upset the hardline GOP folks that are, whatever Trump wants, let's give it to him. And it seems like right around the same time, those allegations of drug use and a box following around DC with the whatever pills in it emerged. And maybe it's true that he had a drug box, and it seems to be true that he partakes in ketamine and other things, but it seems to be a discrediting tactic.
I love that Kim is making this point because it is true that one of the tactics used when you're trying to silence someone is the idea that you smear them to the point that their credibility no longer exists.
Mhm.
So just as Musk was built up as this brilliant entrepreneur, richest man in the world, he's going to bring that brilliance and efficiencies to U.S. government. When he turned, even just mildly, I mean, I thought his comments about the big, beautiful bill were pretty tepid. But when he turned, now you have potentially what Kim's talking about, which is they leak all of this stuff regarding drug abuse, regarding a kind of character assassination. You know who they did this with? They did this with Elliot Spitzer. Do you remember Elliot Spitzer? Elliot Spitzer was this crusader against Wall Street who was prosecuting a lot of Wall Street malfeasance. And if you look, and this was really documented in a movie called, I want to say it was called Client Number 9 or something like but it was really a great breakdown.
Google it.
Yeah, you can find the name. It took Wall Street, very much threatened by what Spitzer was doing. It took them no time to concoct a plan to destroy Elliot Spitzer. And how are they going to do it? They were going to do it by showing that he was a client of this call girl. And here he is crusading against Wall Street, right? He's the district attorney, or what was he? You can tell, I forget his official title. And there it is, client number 9. Yeah, the rise and fall of Elliot Spitzer. But here's the key, and here's why there's a parallel. Because he was really holding Wall Street to account. I mean, on criminal charges for criminal malfeasance that he could prove in court. And they were worried to the point that they set him up. Client number 9, you should see that movie, is about the fact that he was a client of this call girl. And to be fair, when you're the lead justice officer, you shouldn't be doing something illegal like seeing a sex worker and you're paying for sex. But be that as it may, it became a huge story because they made sure that they did the character assassination necessary to destroy Elliot Spitzer. That is what happened there. There's a part of this Elon Musk thing that may quack like that, like Kim's saying. All of a sudden, Musk is off his leash. And he is talking about how the big, beautiful bill actually will bloat the deficit and worked against those things that you said you were for. And now they're all after him. And what's the way to destroy him? Character assassination, drug use. He's out of it. And since we all already are not fans of Elon Musk, look at his polling numbers. He polls like lower than the Democrats do, and they're down in the 20s. It's an easy target. So I love that take, Kim. I actually think that there may be some truth to it.
Well, it's interesting because they knew this all along about Elon Musk. We all have known about the ketamine use and other things. And so it's not like a new discovery. Maybe the drug box following him around DC is a new discovery, but it's not like we didn't know that Elon Musk partakes, right?
That's
But
right.
now all of a sudden, because he disagreed, and it's not like he turned on Trump, he just disagreed, saying, look, you hired me to cut, and now you're inflating the deficit. I thought we were supposed to be going the other way.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
that's your worst offense.
Right. The charm of his drug use is gone.
Right.
Now let's play it. Yeah, Christ, he smoked weed on Joe Rogan, says
Right.
says Dan. That's exactly right. I mean, nothing here that we didn't.
Right.
All right, so I'm running behind. I want to thank you for being here. Smash the like button if you would. Smash it with your iron rod. Smash it like a boss.
Smash it with your
It's a
iron rod.
thumbs up. It costs you nothing. We appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to the show, really appreciate you subscribing, giving us a thumbs up and hitting the notification bell. That way you'll know, and we have any kind of a special thing going on for you whenever we also post a live show. We're on live 11 to 1 in the West and 2 to 4 in the East. And this that follows is a conversation about a part of Civil War history that not only was forgotten, but it was twisted. And in the history of the Confederacy, they took this Civil War history, this incident, this kidnapping of a free man, and they made it seem as though he was conscripted and served the Confederacy in a way that he clearly did not. But there's way more to the story than that. The book is called Kidnapped at Sea, and we'll get into that conversation now, followed by the great David Cay Johnston. So smash the like button. Thanks for being here, Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
So cool to have an author on, and so cool to have a book that's about something I had a total misconception about. This is a book called Kidnapped at Sea. It recounts this little-known story, although it is one that I think has got into the zeitgeist a bit, of David Henry White. He's a free black teenager from Delaware. He was abducted by the Confederate raider ship. I'll have more on that as we talk to Andrew Sillen, the author. He'll fill in a lot of the details, but he was taken, White was, this teenager, black teenager, taken from a merchant ship under the false pretense that he was an enslaved person, and then he was forced into servitude and had 600 days of servitude with these incredibly harsh conditions. Again, we'll talk to Andrew about those. And this book folds into this incredible story all of these themes of maritime warfare and racial injustice and the distortion of historical memory. I mean, that's the big thing, how this story was perverted in the history that was told. So without any further delay, although I do love delaying, how about it for Andrew Sillen, everyone? Yeah. Wow. What a story. And it's interesting because it is a story that I was familiar with, but I was familiar with it in the wrong way. I mean, I think I'd heard the perverted story, Andrew Sillen, the story that made it sound like this 12-year-old was rescued, you know?
Well, you're one of the few people who even heard the perverted story. I mean, most of us, and certainly for myself, I never knew anything at all about this individual, perverted or otherwise. And it was a really random kind of event that caused me to encounter him. I encountered the story of the Alabama, the ship that he was enslaved on, while I was living in Cape Town in the 1980s. And that was a really strange encounter in itself, because who knew that there was a Civil War Confederate vessel that had visited Cape Town? But I encountered that, and I got interested in the story. And as I researched the Alabama, I encountered David Henry White. And then I discovered that everything that was written about him by the officers in their memoirs was completely untrue, absolute lies. And so my journey has been a journey of discovery and a kind of forensic journey to discover the truth about this young man. And as you so beautifully introduced this, the truth is really quite shocking.
And David Henry White, this young guy, who finds himself in this predicament. How did you put together all of the pieces that then form the narrative, the correct narrative as to what happened?
Well, I read the memoirs of the Alabama's officers with skepticism. And, I think a lot of this kind of thing amounts to asking the right question in the first place. It's not so much that the research itself was so difficult to do, but the initial question that you ask is what's important. And very early on, I decided that what I read about White did not sound correct. It couldn't be. And so I asked the question, what was his story and how could I possibly find his story? And that set me off on my own research journey in which I recovered scant information there was about him. And even though there wasn't all that much information, it was very important information because it critically showed that everything that was written about him was a lie.
And it makes sense in a way that those officers who kept the log as to what was going on, they were part of the whitewash, But what happened in the history after this incident was part of a more aggressive whitewash.
Yeah, the book is actually about at least two things, as you pointed out. One is the story of David Henry White, but the other larger story is how his life was appropriated by the Confederate officers in their memoirs, which became part of what's been known as the lost cause, a reinvention of the Civil War's purpose and a narrative that really whitewashes, as you say, the cause of the war and also articulated this trope, which we're all familiar with. Certainly those who watched mid-20th century and early 20th century Hollywood movies are familiar with the trope of the happy slave contented in servitude, part of a family relationship with all sorts of affection between masters and slaves. And this was, of course, a series of falsehoods. And the interesting thing about White's story is that it's so easy to dispel it and to disprove it. And it's also that the fellow who wrote about him was one of the architects of the lost cause itself.
Raphael Semmes, is that how he says his last name? He was really one of the driving forces, if not the driving force that you note in the book, was associated with the recharacterizing this entire story as speaking sort of for a Confederate rescue, a way to whitewash essentially all the real facts of history.
Oh yeah, and he does it very explicitly. He's got a long passage in his memoir in which he describes White. He describes him as a passenger on the ship that he was taken from. He describes him as a slave. He describes him as a slave of a Delaware businessman. He says that he, in fact, liberated him and that he improved his condition. And what I'm able to show is that virtually every single thing that Semmes wrote about White was a lie. And we can show it with forensic documentation. For example, Semmes said that he was bettered and given the pay of his station and grade. Well, White had the position of cook on the Tonawanda, the ship he was taken from, and he was paid $15 a month. In the Alabama's registers and manifests, he has the position of boy with a salary of $9 a month. So his condition was bettered with a reduction in pay and a demotion, and so on.
Yeah, and this Semmes narrative, though, really did take hold. It got traction, I mean,
it got a lot of traction. There must be at least a dozen books in the 20th century and in the first part of the 21st century on Semmes and the Alabama. And every single one of them simply recapitulates Semmes's description of White. No one had ever really gone to the primary record to see if what Semmes had to say about White was true. And, that was a little bit difficult for me because, I don't want to be the enfant terrible of history. I didn't see it was my role to, expose everybody that got the story wrong. But on the other hand, I had to document how White's story had been appropriated and found its way into conventional history. So I ended up putting a lot of those secondary references into the footnotes. That seemed like a good compromise for how to deal with it.
Yeah, you show your math, and it's interesting that this is part of an effort, I think, to rewrite Civil War history and to cast the Confederacy in a light that isn't completely arch and negative. And so this is a really great fable that they have concocted, that Semmes concocted, to sort of suggest, the warmer touch of the Confederate Army, and in this case, maritime army in this case.
Mm. Yeah, and another manifestation of that is that in his memoir, Semmes talks about the care that he took to save all those who couldn't swim. When actually what happened is that when the Alabama was finally vanquished by a Union vessel and started to sink, there was another vessel that came along that saved a very large proportion of the Confederate officers, and none of the individuals of whites rank, none of the boys or servants or stewards, they drowned. And in fact, the record shows that this vessel that saved the Confederate officers actually sank a lifeboat on its way as it escaped, leaving the Union vessel to pick up the remainder for a full half hour while the Confederates escaped.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. This is an incredible story of David Henry White, this young man, and who ends up on this Confederate vessel. And I want to talk about his experience there in a second. But I wondered if you can just give me a sense of, and give us a sense of the vessel and what it was doing. I mean, the Alabama raids had an impact on the Union merchant fleet, and I wonder if you can speak to sort of what was going on there.
Sure. Well, we're all familiar with the war on land and the horrific carnage of the battles of Shiloh and Gettysburg. We're less familiar with the international dimension of the war and the war on the high seas. And in some ways, the international dimension was as important as what was going on land, because the Civil War had become a war of attrition. Like the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, a lot depended upon which nations were going to recognize the Confederacy. So the Union had a policy and a strategy of a blockade, and was trying to interrupt commerce with the South. But the South responded by building these commerce raiders. And there were 4 or 5 of them. They went all over the North Atlantic, South Atlantic, and Indian Oceans, raiding Union commerce. And the Alabama was particularly effective. Over 3 years, if you can believe this, it destroyed or bonded, took out of service, sank on the high seas, 64 Union vessels and a warship.
That's extraordinary.
It destroyed Union commerce. About half of American vessels found foreign flags, and there was a 500% increase in maritime insurance. And it was said that the vibrant pre-war naval American merchant marine, never really recovered from the disaster. So that was one aspect of it. But another aspect of it is that every time he burnt a ship and every time he went into a friendly port in the British colonies and the French colonies, he was celebrated. And there was tremendous sympathy for the Confederacy, because economies of these countries really depended upon the cotton trade. And so when the Alabama finally sank, it was finally sunk in the Battle of Cherbourg on June 19th, 1864. It was a major international event, and it even contributed to Lincoln's re-election in the election of 1864.
Well, and it was David Henry White that was trapped on board, right? I mean, that was sadly, I mean, after this horrifying, you can give people an idea of what the conditions were like on the ship for David Henry White, abducted and now forced to work on board the ship under the conditions you'll describe, or just give us a rough idea, and then ultimately meets his demise because, isn't that right?
Yeah, well, we don't know exactly what his condition was. We know that Semmes and his officers said they took him because they needed they needed servants in the officers' mess. Why did they need servants in the officers' mess? Well, for one thing, their whole lives, they had been used to having their meals served by black servants. And there were none on the Alabama when it encountered the Tonawanda. Secondly, the Alabama encountered the Tonawanda. In its mailbags were the Philadelphia newspapers that carried the news of the draft Emancipation Proclamation. And that must have enraged Semmes, and I'm sure he wanted to make a point. But the other thing is that, and I talk about this in the book, that I look at the anatomy of the Alabama itself, of the ship, and it's very clear that the officers' quarters, it was quite traditional, the officers' quarters were in the rear, and that's where their mess was, where they ate. Where the crew was in the aft, in the front, in the forecastle, and the galley was also in the front. And there was no communication in the lower deck between these two areas. So if the officers wanted hot food, and they thought doing that sort of thing for themselves was a menial task they would never do, but the problem was the galley was at the other end of the ship, so they needed a menial, preferably a black one, to serve them. So his life involved going back and forth a couple of times a day from one end of the ship to the other, carrying food. And we don't know whether he was in irons when the ship went into port. The Confederates say, oh, every time we went into port, he was free as a bird. He could leave anytime he wants. Meanwhile, the actual accounts of the Alabama show that every time it went into port, sailors tried to desert, and they were always dragged back in irons. And they were white, right? So
Yeah.
we can only imagine how they treated this fellow. And
Yeah,
it's hard to
David,
imagine that,
was
that he
there
was the
any-
one person on board who was allowed to leave the vessel.
Yeah, right. It would be that does sort of strain credulity. David Henry White, any records that would in any way suggest he tried to get away?
The closest thing I could find to that is that Semmes writes in his memoirs about another servant he had on a previous boat called the Sumter, a servant named Ned, whom he described as a loyal servant. But in fact, it turns out that Ned deserted in Suriname. So, you can't take anything that Semmes says at face value. We are told that White drowned in the final battle. I have no reason to believe otherwise. There's no evidence that he survived. He didn't show up on any of the records of the Cherbourg authorities or any of the records of either the Kearsarge, the boat that vanquished the Alabama, or the British authorities. There's no evidence that he survived. I mean, you could always speculate that maybe there's a happy ending and he escaped, but it's that strains credulity too.
Sure. Did the international maritime law world have any take on this?
The international maritime world had a huge take on the Alabama's voyage after the war. There was an international court of arbitration, which was very famous for being the first of its kind. And America was deeply upset with Great Britain because the Alabama had been constructed illegally in Liverpool in violation of neutrality rules. And so, the American government sued Great Britain, and eventually there was a settlement, an international arbitration, in which Great Britain had to pay America $15 million, which is a fortune in its day. White is actually mentioned in the deposition of the Tonawanda's captain. And so it is in the papers that White was kidnapped. However, there was no conversation or discussion of any kind of compensation to White's family that I could find.
Yeah, they were mostly concerned with the illegal construction of the vessel as opposed to...
They were concerned with the loss of the merchant cargoes.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So take me to today as we finish up here, because I felt as though this piece was so beautiful in the way that you have told the story
of David Henry White, and it's encased in all of these other issues that are still quite so contemporary. I'm wondering what you want the reader to take away.
Well, for one thing, there's a resonance with the whole issue of disinformation. So, we're very concerned about disinformation now, most notably the 2020 election and all the lies that have been told about that. And of course, now in the world of AI, we have to be even more cautious about disinformation. But the point I want to make is that none of this is new. That this kind of disinformation goes back, it's really a very integral part of American history. And the disinformation about white really resonates with the kinds of lies we hear today. And it's been said, I'm not the first to notice this, but a number of historians have mentioned that the lost cause itself resonates with the stolen election narrative, in the sense that both of these are constructed narratives that are manufactured for the purpose of animating reactionary forces. And the kinds of rhetoric that we see in the language of Semmes is very familiar. Readers will, I let the readers read Semmes's own words, and I guarantee that you will find them to be extraordinarily familiar. And I believe it's a good example of how we can use the present to understand the past.
Such a great point. And I think even with Civil War history, you're seeing an active, aggressive effort to recharacterize and reposition and retell things in a completely fictitious way, that serves another interest. It's scary. Andrew Sillen, author of Kidnapped at Sea, The Civil War Voyage of David Henry White. What a fascinating story with, as Andrew's saying, with instructive moments and overall instructive for today. By the way, kidnappedatsea.com is the website. But in addition to the website, there is, I'm told, a robust Facebook page for Kidnapped at Sea. How does that work? It's what is it called?
Kidnapped at Sea, the book.
Love it. Kidnapped at Sea, the book on Facebook. Get it there. Kidnappedatsea.com, and we'll have a click through to the book, Kidnapped at Sea, The Civil War Voyage of David Henry White. We'll have that for you underneath this video. So if you're watching this video or if you're listening on the podcast, just check YouTube, and there'll be a click through for the video, for the book under the video. Andrew, what a pleasure to meet you. I can only imagine the kind of work that went into this, because the records are so fragmented and scarce, and it took a real kind of writer, journalist, investigator to get it all done. So I really applaud you on that.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Andrew Sillen, everybody. Good stuff.
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
How great is Andrew Sillen? I mean, that's a rigorously researched and documented work. And this week, you can see him on Friday at the New York Public Library. A full discussion. Those of you who are in New York, take note. On Friday, Andrew Sillen will be speaking and reading parts of the book at the New York Public Library. Do check the internet, maybe the Facebook, etc., for more events that way. In fact, Tony, I'll send you the link and you can post it under the video in case there are people who are in New York who want. So if you're in New York, you can click right on the link. We'll put it under the video, and you'll be able to get all the information on Andrew Sillen's writings. So, as I say, rigorously researched and documented. All right, I'm sorry to keep this guy waiting. He's
The Mark Thompson Show.
What do you say? Now our featured performer. He is a brilliant public intellectual, but of course his work as a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter and a prolific author is all about Trump. It's all about taxes. It's all about the elite taking advantage of the tax system and the American economy, all documented so well through the years by this guy who is a professor now at Rochester Institute Institute of Technology, the co-founder of DCReport.org. He's David Cay Johnston.
Hello,
sir.
Mark.
David, I'm sensitive to the fact that I kept you overtime last week, so today I'm going to... Okay, good. Well, I'll rock and roll right away. Hey, I wanted to start with something that you have commented on quite a bit on the show, and that's the Ukraine-Russia conflict, because there was a sea change in things as a result of these drone strikes. And I wonder if you could speak to how that might change the conversation around the war and the war itself.
Yeah, if we could come back in 500 or 1,000 years, we would find that every war college in the world is teaching what the Ukrainians have done with limited resources against a much bigger opponent. So the Ukrainians spent 18 months figuring out, as the picture, if you're watching online, shows, how to pack crates with bomb-laden drones. The tops of these crates on radio command would pop off. They got them deep inside Russia to attack 4 air bases, one of which is in far Siberia. Probably would have been easier to approach it from the Pacific Ocean. And as you can see in the picture you have up now, there are a whole group of strategic bombers and transport planes that they blew up. Now, many of the planes they didn't blow up likely are not flyable. The Russians have not been building these 3 types of aircraft for some time, and they've been cannibalizing parts from them to keep the others flying. Clearly, if you're Vladimir Putin or a strategic level officer, a general officer of the Russian military, you've got to be absolutely terrified that this is not a one-off, that they're going to do this again. Now, the Russians have arrested some people who may or may not have been involved in this. If you were one of the drivers of the trucks that had the container in the back, you will undoubtedly be suspect to the Russian government. You may get shot, but may have had nothing to do with it. But this was a brilliant move. And then in addition, they've now managed to seriously damage, I don't know if they brought it all the way down, the key bridge that connects Crimea with the Russian mainland. And of course, in 2014, on Obama's watch, the little green men with no insignias showed up in Crimea. Putin went, I don't know anything about those people. And then once he had control, he went, of course they were my people. And Obama didn't do much because he couldn't get Congress behind him, both parties. Couldn't get them behind him to be much more serious about this. But Ukraine is demonstrating to the Russians again and again, we can hit you, we can hurt you very badly, don't misjudge. I think you also should expect that soon there will be major missile attacks on Kyiv, Lviv, Odessa, not Odessa, but Kyiv, Lviv, and some other Ukrainian cities by the Russians. And keep in mind that all the way back to the era of the czars and the boyars, who were the aristocrats, that the Russians have never respected the law of war and the rules of war. They have always attacked school children, hospitals, homes for the elderly and disabled. And you should just expect they will continue to do that because the culture doesn't have any respect for the notion that there are legitimate and illegitimate ways to wage war. And of course, all war, as I think it was Dwight Eisenhower said to us, but if not, George Marshall, one of the other World War II generals, all war is a crime.
Sure. But as you say, the history of this war is replete with examples of war crimes on the part of the Russians that are pretty heinous. Here's Tony, who says, David, do you think Trump is actually faking his rage against Putin and giving Putin more time to conquer Ukraine?
I think that I'm not sure if he's doing that, but Donald is being played by Putin just brilliantly. Putin learned a long time ago how to flatter Donald, as I did when I was talking to him, several times a week. And Putin's game here is time. Time is on his side. Now, there's been another development in this, by the way. The leaders of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, have been saying for at least 12 years that the Russians plan to invade us at some point. With the election of a right-wing leader in Poland this week, There's renewed concern about this, and apparently there's some Russian traffic on state television that's pretty bellicose towards these three states. An expansion of the war along those lines would definitely involve NATO. So Putin is got to be hoping that he can go after a minor NATO country. The U.S. won't get involved. Well, the British, the French, and the Canadians will get involved. That they've made that very clear.
It also seems, David, like an inopportune moment for him to do that. That kind of expansion on your military is already stressed. You've detailed before here about all of these things associated with a military that is diminished immensely. I mean, you talked about the pole carts and the donkey carts, and how they're. It's almost medieval the way now he's having to fight this war in some ways, and so to expand to another front, that would seem like it might be a bridge too far.
It would be. But that doesn't mean it won't happen.
Okay.
The very closing days of World War II, when anybody realized the Germans were going to be defeated and the Western Allies and the Russians were both racing to get to Berlin first, Hitler ordered that the theologian Bonhoeffer be hung, and he ordered that one of his generals in the field be brought back to see him. And they had to divert, a dozen, 20, some large number of fighter planes as an escort to safely get this guy back. And then when he got there, he just spoke to him, said nothing of consequence, and sent him back to where he was. You might think of what the position Putin is in as being analogous to very poor people who do not have enough money, no matter what. Doesn't matter what decision you make. Every decision is wrong. There's actually what's called the poverty game. It's an exercise that's carried on in various places to show people how awful it is when you don't have nearly enough money. And when you do that and every decision is wrong, you make lots of bad decisions. And I think there's a very good chance we will see Putin making increasingly bad decisions, likely to be lethally bad for Ukrainians and perhaps officers who, in the view of Vladimir Putin, haven't performed for the modern Tsar.
That's a great way to characterize it. Wow. It really does sort of, you have to gird yourself for what may happen in the days ahead. All right, I want to turn to domestic stuff and this big beautiful bill thing. I mean, again, they got the branding of Trump. That's sort of the gilded branding of a big beautiful bill. It's so classic Trump. But embedded in it, in addition to all the deficit bloating parts of this bill associated with the tax cut, there are aspects to the deregulation and also the bulletproofing of the executive. So the judicial, the thing that's slid in judicially is he doesn't have to, the president, respect any kind of injunction. You can't essentially enjoin any sort of executive order of his. And there are other things like that embedded in this bill.
Right. So this bill is economically damaging. The numbers from the Congressional Budget Office, this is Congress's own staff telling them this will reduce economic growth, increase the deficit, raise interest rates. Donald lives in this happy-go-magic land where I just say it and that makes it true. A number of Republicans, particularly ones who are not in deep red territory, have begun to realize that they could be voted out in 2 years or 4 years. That's 2/3 of the Senate over 4 years. And so some of them are speaking up about provisions in this bill. And the bill also doesn't have things Donald promised. Donald said that people like me would not be taxed on our Social Security. Yeah, that's not in the bill. There is no tax on tips. Well, that's going to make the income tax system even more troubled because right now the minimum wage for, unless you have a state law to the contrary, the minimum federal wage for restaurant and bar waitstaff is $2.13 an hour. And that's been in place since 1993. So it's now less than $1 an hour in real terms. And the rest is made up by your tips. Well, how are we going to police and report tips? And why wouldn't I say, I'll just work for tips? What's the $1 an hour? And so that's one problem. There are numerous other ones in this law. But the core thing to watch is that what Donald is trying to do in firing inspectors general, in rewriting contracts, in leaning on the government in Gambia and 3 other African nations to give contracts to Elon Musk's Starlink under threat of losing all the U.S. aid they're getting, which isn't that much money, by the way. We're talking about a few $100 million. There was less than $1 per American. All of this is designed to make sure there is no accountability. That's what dictators do. That's why I've been saying on this show since February 26, Donald has declared himself our dictator. And I've been warning since 2011. That was always the goal, to be the dictator and not to be beyond review. And now we have multiple reports of Canadians coming to the U.S. border who are being asked, do you support Donald Trump? And people who say no have their passport stamped denied entry 4 years or denied entry 5 years just for not saying that they support Donald Trump. My 7th child, who's a lawyer in Canada, was just here to visit. She just left, got across the border a few minutes ago. Her wife did not come with her because Molly is a dual citizen. Her wife is a natural-born Canadian citizen. And Molly believes there's a very high risk she'll be stopped at the border. If we go to visit them near Toronto, we will take burner phones or a burner phone because they're searching your phone and searching your laptop. They are people who show up because they're compliant with the law for their court hearings on asylum claims. The Trump administration tells the administrative law judge, who is part of the Trump administration, these are not Article 3 judges who are independent, these are administrative law judges, that they are to dismiss the asylum claims, and then they arrest mom or mom and dad. They've deported a number of children who are U.S. citizens. And technically, they haven't deported them, they have rendered them.
Well, we were talking the first half hour, David, not to interrupt, but just about that this honor student on his way to soccer practice. He's been here since he was 6 years old, and he was just scooped up. And the government says, yeah, he actually isn't on our list, but we stand by the detaining of this guy. I mean, and
they don't make mistakes. No, I mean, this is something that Roy Cohn, back when Donald Trump was a very young man, taught him. You never made a mistake. You stand by whatever you did. And of course, the only mistake that I know of in the almost 40 years I've known Donald that he's ever admitted to was when I predicted, he said, the only mistake I made was I should never have left in January of 2025, 2021. And I had predicted he wouldn't leave peacefully, and he didn't.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that a window on the future too?
Yeah.
So I like that you mentioned the culling of information or the reviewing of information on laptops and phones, et cetera, because it's a good kind of segue into this thing that concerns me so much, and that's the new government contract granted to Palantir, that digital and data collection service, as they now, and they already have huge contracts with the government. I mean, they're approaching $1 billion to help with homeland security. And then there are all of these different contracts. If you add them up, it's like $1.5 billion. And now the new one is to centralize all the data on Americans across federal agencies. So we all have breadcrumbs that lead to a profile of ourselves, right, across all of these different federal agencies. And now they're saying, we want Palantir, this huge, powerful data collection service that's already helping with illegal immigration, et cetera. We want them to compile a file on every single citizen in America based on all this information that's out there.
You can tell from my gray hair, I'm old enough to remember when Republicans said we can't have a list of people who have gun permits because that would allow the government too much surveillance power over us. Not hearing a word from the NRA or everybody else about what they're doing. But clearly what they're doing is they're building a surveillance state. Now, in a lot of ways, we're going to have a surveillance state whether we like it or not. I mean, it was more than 25 years ago that Scott McNeely, the founder of Sun Microsystems, said, you don't have any privacy anymore, get over it. But there's a big difference between lots of cameras on the street where you have no expectation of privacy and collecting your IRS information, your W-2 information from Social Security, your licenses of any kind, your passport information, and putting it in a database. By the way, a database owned and controlled by an African immigrant named Peter Thiel, who, like Elon Musk, is from South Africa. And this is all setting up the dictatorship. And I don't see the hair on fire coverage I would expect about this.
Thank you.
It's namby-pamby. It's very polite. It's, oh, what are they doing? What does this mean? I think it's plainly obvious what it means, and a whole bunch of people who understand authoritarianism. Sarah Kendzior, who's about to have her first piece in DC Report, by the way.
Oh, that's great. She's been on the show a couple times. I love her.
Yeah. Sarah, who, along with the three professors at Yale who are going to the University of Toronto, they are among the most insightful and deeply informed about authoritarianism and how democracies are taken over. You add into this the election of the pro-Trump, basically, president of Poland, who won by a very tiny margin. And I think you're going to see Poland, which, remember, is the country the Nazis put most of their crematoria in, sliding back to become a fascistic authoritarian, or at least certainly an authoritarian state, undoing the progress that had been made towards decency.
Yeah, think about just recent history. I guess it's not so recent, with the rise of a democracy to the freedoms that they fought so hard for in Poland. And now you saw that same thing happen in the Netherlands. The Netherlands also going a right wing, right, David? I mean, they're all struggling.
Well, maybe.
Well, go ahead.
I'm not sure because the leader of the far right party broke in the coalition with the government.
Right.
And so the government has to have a new election because it's a parliamentary system. But I don't know enough about that election to tell you whether that means they're going to the right or not.
Nor do I, probably, but I will say they've made a lot of political hay of the immigration issue. I mean, that's a big winner in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look at the monies spent here, hey, can you play for David, Tony, the Kristi Noem back and forth when she's questioned about the money that's going? It's with the Democrat. I've just spaced who it is. It's not this piece. This is the Elon Musk thing. I'll play that for David as long as you have it up. Oh no, you got the other one now? Tony's so good. He's yeah. I want you, just because we're talking about immigration. Here's a little bit with Kristi Noem, and then I'd love to get your reaction. Here we go.
About the cost of the wall, the billions of dollars that are going to be put forward. We do have to have accurate numbers so that we could look at that for funding it. But I would hope you also take a look at all of the cost of a wall, because there are a lot of other secondary kinds of defenses you have to put forward. I was at the wall. I've been with security folks. They tell me that a lot of the cartels have designed very sophisticated technologies to get over the wall. Mm-hmm. They're called ladders and they're called ropes. So a wall doesn't really do the job if there's not a lot of other background technologies there. So you just can't put out a cost for the wall. That's money that's not going to be as effective without everything else. So let's have a discussion about that. For the first time in U.S. history, the federal government, at the direction of President Trump, is moving immigrants apprehended and detained in the United States on civil immigration charges to Naval Station at Guantanamo Bay, which I know you're very familiar with. In March, I traveled to Guantanamo Bay with several colleagues to have a firsthand examination of the detention operations underway. And I certainly have serious concerns about the cost involved there. To date, can you tell us the total cost for detaining individuals at Guantanamo Bay?
You want the cost per individual?
Do you have that?
I do not have that with me today, sir. I can get that for you.
Well, I do have a number. Do you know how much it costs to hold an immigrant in ICE detention facility in the United States? Do you have that number?
Now, are you talking per day? 100 and I believe the last estimate that I got was $142 a day, around in that approximately per day.
But it's close to what I'm understanding. I understand it's $165 per day, so it's in the range. I'm still waiting for detailed financial information from this administration from my time to Guantanamo Bay. In fact, a letter with Ranking Member or Chairman Paul and the Ranking Member together, we wanted more information.
Okay, good. Tony, I can stop there. This is about money mostly, right, David? But it speaks to the way that they are throwing up figures and making up figures and just pulling figures out of their rear.
I'm surprised Kristi Noem didn't say, I don't know, more than she did, because that's become a standard. Donald Trump does it all the time. He doesn't want to answer questions. I don't know. You need to ask somebody else. And of course, we know he's not taking his daily briefings, and they've been talking about how to redo the daily briefings as a mock television show in the style of Fox News so that he'll pay attention. Because and of course, the reason he doesn't take them is that Donald is so appallingly ignorant that the things in a presidential daily briefing would be meaningless to him. It's, why do I have to sit here and listen to this? I have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, David, sorry to interrupt, but this is such a fascinating story. We did talk about it late last week, the fact, maybe it was yesterday, that they are now desperate to reconstitute the way that they do the presidential daily briefing because he's taking so few of them. He's averaging one a week, and that might be generous in the way you look at those stats. So he's basically not taking briefings, and she, Tulsi Gabbard, it's been leaked, looking for ways to, as David says, put together a video with an anchor who looks like they're on Fox News Channel so that he'll watch that. And they're trying to include his name more, and it's lunacy, David.
Well, because he doesn't know anything, so it doesn't mean anything to him. As opposed to Barack Obama, who wanted more briefings, more information. There's long been, under various presidents, a rule: a presidential memo shouldn't be more than 2 pages. And Obama, according to his science advisor when I interviewed him, literally would say, I'm going to need 14 or 16, 20 more pages on this. And he would read it and he would speak later because he's got a brilliant, very agile and sophisticated mind, and he could understand all of this stuff. Whereas Donald is just not capable of doing that. But the one of the strategies here is, I don't have the numbers, I'll get back to you the numbers. And then why would we believe the numbers? We know when they were holding, the last time we got a thorough report on the few remaining people from 9/11 being held in Guantanamo more than 2 decades later, that the cost was, millions of dollars per year, because it's a tiny little strip of Cuba that we have rights to historically. I don't know how long, when they run out, if they do. And you have to fly everything in. You have to maintain the soldiers there. You have to rotate them in and out constantly. It's craziness, and this is going to continue. There's not going to be any regard for spending money.
Right.
Kristi Noem's department has been spending money beyond their budget. Another senator brought that up. The senator you saw in the clip is the senior senator from Michigan, and he's long been steeped in issues about government spending, and they're just they'll make up numbers, they'll withhold numbers, they'll deny them, they'll do whatever's in their interest to avoid accountability.
And as you say, that agency, DHS, that she heads is bleeding money. It's incredible. And of course, the one thing that they're doing and spending money on is this media campaign. I mean, they carpet bomb the air of particularly Fox News Channel with these ads. But it's not just Fox News Channel. They're buying network TV, they're buying digital to show Kristi Noem, to show the ways in which they are rounding up these illegals, et cetera. And to me, David, that's associated with building that brand. We're tough on immigration. It's almost like a campaign ad on an ongoing basis.
Well, and the reason they're buying ads or public service announcements is very clear. It's because they don't have to worry about any pushback. There aren't going to be any nosy reporters asking questions. And so when the New York Times breaks this story about Elon Musk and his heavy drug use, and he denies that that's true, and then you find out, well, there are videos where he admitted this. There are videos of him where you can see he's clearly loopy and on drugs and doing bizarre things, just as you can see, all sorts of videos of Don Jr. under the influence of something. I mean, it's widely reported to be cocaine. I don't know what it is, but clearly he's under the influence of some psychotropic agent. And they don't care. They're not going to be consistent about anything. It's about power, unregulated, uncontrolled, unaccountable power. That's all it's ever been about. And sadly, tens of millions of Americans if Donald says something, that's the truth. That's
it's-
God's truth.
It's truly it's a cultist kind of thing. In my last minute with David, I want him to see that Elon Musk tweet and just get his reaction. That's from the piece I just sent you. Here we go. This just take 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it. Cameron.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's, but interesting to see all of a sudden Musk biting back a little bit, David, you know?
Well, all relationships with Donald come a cropper at some point because it's a one-way street. I don't think it's over, especially if my theory, and it's only a theory, that Donald is financially beholden to him over his civil cases in New York, more than $600 million now with interest in 2 separate cases. But it is bizarre that the Republicans are constantly saying the national debt's going to ruin the country, and they want to add billions of dollars to the national debt to lower the taxes on people who already have so much money, they can't even gamble it away. And that's how rich Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and a few of the others, Bill Gates, are. Even if they went to a casino and gambled at the highest rate they could, like the guy I observed in Trump's casino years ago, Akio Kashiwaki, gambling at the rate of $14 million an hour. I'm sorry, if you got more than $100 billion in the remaining lifetime you have just gambling, you can't possibly lose all your money. There's no utility there, as an economist would say. But that's not what it's about. It's about, we're going to live regal lives and you are going to pay for it. And you're so dumb, you don't even know what's happening to you.
I'm glad that we got to some stuff today, David. There is, they're serving up issues that I want to ask you about, like a short order chef over there in Washington and more. But we'll wait till next time. Thanks so much for your time. I look forward to next week.
Take care.
All right, David Cay Johnston, everybody. Love it. I love
it. Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
Well said, DCJ, says you matter. Yeah. It's thanks, David. David's a treasure on this show. Mm-hmm. Trump can pay Elon $600 million now since he made $1 billion a month since being elected. So bye-bye, Elon. By the way, thank you, Inlays, because as David was making that point, I had the same thought, which is at the time that Elon produced money that Trump needed, the $600 million to which David was referring, Trump needed that money. But now he doesn't need that money because he's made a fortune in many different ways, not the least of which is the meme coin. The meme coin, again, just to review, a meme coin in 30 seconds or less has no intrinsic value. It's not used for buying anything. Think of it as memorabilia. Think of it as a signed Golden State Warriors jersey or a 49ers jersey or a Lakers jersey, whatever. You can't go anywhere and use that Lakers jersey to buy anything. But if a bunch of people want to buy a jersey that you have, then the value of that jersey goes up. That's what a meme coin is. It's collectible. And Melania got a lot of money with her meme coin, and Trump's received tremendous amounts of money through his meme coin because, remember, it's a way of buying attention. It's a way of getting a sort of patronage going with those who want to come to him and provide for him a donation and then an access avenue to the presidency. So all of that money through the meme coin has totaled tremendous hundreds of millions of dollars. It may be north of $1 billion. So between that and the crypto platform on which you can buy the meme coin, which is World Liberty, that's also owned by the Trump family, you realize all of these avenues of revenue for Trump. I'm leaving out a lot of other ways in which he is moneying himself through all of these trade deals and backdoor monies that are coming to him. So it's true what Inlays was saying, which is, and it was also true what David Cay Johnston was saying. At the time, $600 million that Elon gave Trump He needed it. Now he's got that on him because he's legitimately found a business that's made him a ton of money. What is that business that Trump has found? The American presidency. There has never been anything like this. Donald Trump is for sale. The pardons are for sale. The legislation is for sale. The tariff relief is for sale. It's all for sale.
There's never been anything like this.
So there you have it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm looking at the magical clock on the wall. And tell me, I wanted to get Kim's news, and I've also got Jefferson Graham. How do I do this, Kim? You sort this out for me, please.
Let's do a quick news.
Jeff, hang out. You know, I don't know what you're doing. Smoke a bowl or whatever you kids do over there with the, look at the crowd is.
Wow.
Kick it, you know. Maybe figure out a new HDMI or a new wireless. I don't know what you have, your pods or AirPod. Let me bring him on for you're going to be okay hanging out for a few minutes while Kim does the news? Okay, all right. He's the coolest. Jeff is very cool.
He is a cool guy.
It is Tech Tuesday. We'll check in with Jefferson Graham. First check of Kim's news. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We ask you to smash that like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, hit that thumbs up. Also, if you are here and subscribing to the channel, we love you. If you hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there is a new video. Kim's news, and then the great Jefferson Graham. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And we begin with Elon Musk's criticism of President Trump's big, beautiful bill being downplayed by the White House. In a post on X today, Musk called the bill a disgusting abomination. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, as you saw in the video here on the Mark Thompson Show moments ago, said Trump already knows where Musk stands on that bill. The spending bills also faced some pushback from some Republicans, including Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. He said he's a no unless the bill is changed to cut the deficit more.
A disgusting abomination doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room. He really did. He leaned in hard on his objection. You know
What?
Yeah.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah.
President
That was
Trump
very inappropriate.
Yeah. All right.
Trump denying reports of the United States advancing a new deal with Iran that would allow the enrichment of uranium at nuclear facilities. This comes after Axios reported that U.S. officials gave Iran a proposal for a nuclear agreement that would allow low-level uranium enrichment on Iranian soil for a to-be-determined time. The president took to Truth Social saying, under the potential agreement, we will not allow any enrichment of uranium. And both the United States and Iran have expressed public optimism about a path toward a new deal, but still a lot of questions about what that looks like. Family members of the man charged in the fire attack on the Israeli hostage supporters in Colorado have been arrested by ICE. This is the family of the suspect in this case. Multiple reports say the wife and 5 children of Mohammed Sabri Soliman have been taken into custody. Soliman is here illegally from Egypt. He faces federal and state charges after at least 12 people were hurt.
They're playing this guy. This is the, I believe this is the same guy. They're playing this as he's the guy who threw the Molotov cocktail, and it is an act of domestic terrorism. I completely agree with that. The dude who threw it, they're playing as a Biden immigrant. Like this is a Biden policy, failed immigration policy that allowed this guy to be here. Now, I'm no expert at the calendar, but I'm trying to figure out when this guy came. He did come in 2018. Who was president in 2018? It was Trump, wasn't it, in 2018? Am I wrong about that? I don't know. I'm just a guy working here, but it seems to me like the math doesn't quite add up. Maybe I'm not looking at all the specifics. I don't see how this guy's presence in America traces back to Biden in any way. Now, I think what they're going to say is, well, he overstayed his visa under Biden.
Right.
Okay.
That he might have come in under Trump in 2018, but he
exactly.
Stayed,
so he's here in this country to begin with. You'd think you wouldn't want to bring it up. I mean, it happened under your presidency, Trump season 1. Now Trump season 2 says, hey, it's all Biden's fault. So I mean, they really do turn everything political. And I understand that there's a temptation to do that. But here, I think the argument just doesn't quite hold water. But again, I just work here.
They're digging down deep into the auto pen situation with President Biden. The Justice Department now investigating the use of this auto pen on hundreds of pardons right before President Biden left the White House. That, according to multiple reports, this comes as concerns about President Biden's state of mind while serving his final months in office are also at play. President Biden granted clemency and pardoned more than 1,500 people in his final weeks, including members of his family and death row inmates as well.
By the way, I didn't support the Biden pardons to his family necessarily. I understand why you could make an argument for why it's a good thing. There was sort of a jihadism about going after the Biden family, going after everyone associated with the J6 committee, et cetera. But look, I thought he played fast and loose with the pardon power. But this guy, Trump, I mean, it's another world. I mean, he pardoning all the J6ers, pardoning anybody whose parents, in the case of the most recent example, donated to Trump's inauguration, donated to his campaign. There is a pay for pardon kind of aspect to this presidency, which makes the whole Biden thing, which I just told you I wasn't cool with, look like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I mean, I don't. They're playing serious pardon games in this administration, and he's not even waiting until the end of his administration, which is when pardons are typically granted. This guy, right out of the chute, Trump is pardon, 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 pardon. Yeah, I'll pardon it. How much money? $1 million? Sure. Okay. The son is free and a full pardon. And the restitution, of course, in the case of those reality stars, that restitution is repaid to them, those who defrauded banks and the U.S. government with taxes. So
Well, now there's an investigation into the use of this auto pen, and Caroline Leavitt said at the podium today that there's a question as to whether some of these pardons will stand. The mayor of Newark, New Jersey, suing the Trump administration over his arrest at an ICE facility last month. Russ Baraka filing the federal lawsuit against interim U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Alina Habba. Habba accused of defamation and false arrest. Baraka was taken into custody outside the ICE detention center when he and members of Congress demanded answers about the facility's conditions. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will be testifying before Congress next week. He is scheduled to appear before both House and Senate Appropriations Defense subcommittees June 10th. It'll be his first public testimony since The Atlantic reported he added a journalist to a group chat on messaging app Signal, where military operations were being discussed. The FDA upgrading a recall on tomatoes linked to a salmonella outbreak in 3 southeastern states, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. They say in the latest report, this produce sold by Williams Farms Repack may cause serious adverse health consequences or death. Don't eat those. White House has unveiled a new official portrait for President Trump. Another new one. Video posted on social media yesterday shows the new portrait being hung in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. The updated version of the portrait has Trump with a stern look on his face with a blue suit, red tie against a black background with some kind of deep shadowing. He looks really tough there, right?
Yeah.
The first presidential portrait to not feature an American flag since President Ford began this tradition in 1974. No flag behind Trump.
I do want to correct something, and thank you to who had the information. 2022 is when Suleiman came into this. It was Rev P. Suleiman entered the U.S. in 2022 as a non-immigrant visitor, and in 2023 he got a 2-year work authorization that expired in March. So it was under Biden's presidency. So thank you. I thought I'd read 2018 somewhere, but totally thank you for that.
And lastly, happy Pride Month, or maybe not. The United States Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, reportedly ordering the Navy to rename a ship that had been named after gay rights icon Harvey Milk. Documents, sources, memos, all cited by military.com, say the renaming of the oiler ship, the USNS Harvey Milk, is underway. U.S. Navy Secretary John Phelan ordered to do so by Hegseth. The timing of the incident during Pride Month, intentional, according to that report. And this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I ran out of vanilla tea and dipped into the mango tea, and what a nice surprise. It's summery, it's refreshing, it's really tasty. The mango tea, one of many available at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you can show it, Tony, but they have a summer sun mango tea. That's this huge tea bag that you can put into a big container and then set outside, and it'll make your mango teas so delicious. That's the tea. Mark loves the coffee.
I do love the coffee. You're right, but I also love the tea. I was drinking the tea all last week because I wasn't feeling well, and it was restorative, if I can use that word. And here now, I am enjoying them. Look at that tea. They're loose leaf tea, and they also have bag tea. They've got it all.
You see that bag right next to it? It's huge, right?
Yeah.
That's your summer sun tea bag, mango tea. And I've decided I'm going to give it for some summer birthday gifts along with a new tea dispenser. So I think
that's great idea. I love it.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the place to find it. I calculated last night.
Yeah,
is it cheaper for me to drink Coachella Valley tea, or is it cheaper for me to drink LaCroix? Because it's one or the other for me.
Oh,
and
I see.
I've decided it's the tea is cheaper. By a long way.
Wow.
So, and I like it better. So it works out for me. CoachellaValley.coffee.com. We've got an exclusive Mark Thompson Show discount. You type in Mark T, no spaces. When you get to the code box, boom, 10% off. They're quick with the sending, and usually they put a little something extra in there for you. So,
baby. You know
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. On to Jefferson Graham. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod. Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Calling me a liar? Know what you call him?
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist and you are a liar.
Why a liar? Your pants are on fire!
Google told me.
Can you let him finish, sir? It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What do the porn stars do?
Do you have a secret now?
Isn't anybody but a weed?
100% effective. How about that?
Say what?
There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time's up, mother effers.
Time's up, mother effers. Hey, great to have everybody here. I got to clean up that house bump, huh, Tony? Sound a little dirty to me. What do you think? No? Sounded okay? Yeah? All right.
I think that's fine.
Maybe it's my headphones or something. Speaking of dirty, how about it for Jefferson Graham, everybody? He's the real thing, longtime tech writer for USA Today. Now he does a show on YouTube and provides a newsletter. Photo Walks TV is what he's doing now. Jefferson Graham, I love your stuff.
High. I am not high.
You're not high. Yeah, I didn't like you did not like the reference to marijuana.
Where are my weed smokers at?
And in conjunction with you're on a natural high, I would say.
Yes, based on life. Life is a natural high.
I was in Alaska last week, was it, or the week before? And I thought of you because there's so many challenges to capturing the Alaskan landscape, with the iPhone. And you believe iPhones and Androids are in some ways, in large measure, all you need to get a lot of the great shots that you want from a vacation or wherever, right?
That's true. I wouldn't recommend it as your only camera for doing the Northern Lights and stuff like that. But for 95% of travel photography, there is no reason to be lugging big, heavy camera gear with you on vacation.
I need to produce Alaska photos from the trip, said shadow producer Calvin Wong. I'll try to send one before the end of this show. I'll share one with you. But it is true also, I just should say, that if you're trying to shoot wildlife and that kind of thing, I mean, photograph wildlife, you probably need some kind of other camera, Jefferson Graham?
Yes,
or
yeah,
not?
definitely.
Yeah.
For wildlife, you want to have a big camera with a big lens and the ability to have high shutter speeds and all that sort of stuff. The only thing you can do for wildlife with a smartphone is get a big picture of sheep out in the field and cows out in the field and bison out in the field. What kind of wildlife did you see in Alaska, Mark?
Well, we saw eagles. We saw bald eagles mostly. The bears didn't really show themselves because it's just pre-salmon season. Like right now in Alaska, for all of you, there might be a couple of people watching in Alaska, the salmon run is where all of the wildlife then shows up, right? The eagles, the bears, they're all feeding and feasting on these salmon. And so it was, I would say, kind of wildlife sparse because it was still wintry and cold, and just on the calendar, the salmon hadn't yet started running. But the answer to your question is we saw eagles, and we also saw, Alaska is so much more than just wildlife. It's incredible landscapes, the glaciers, the fjords in Alaska. It was magnificent. I loved the Alaska trip. I'll tell you the truth. I could take 3 trips a year to Alaska. I found it really wondrous.
Were you on a boat or were you on foot?
We were on a boat, and then we just took excursions. So I'm doing the sort of the gentleman's tour of Alaska. I don't want you to think I'm some backcountry guy. I don't have that. But I totally see the appeal of these long hikes. We took some long hikes through areas that are just rich in fauna and different kinds of moss and different. I mean, when you're with an educated guide, there's just so much in Alaska. It's a place with so much history and so much richness naturally. It was really, really special. Yeah.
Sounds great. Now, did you get any decent shots of the eagles?
I got one. I'll send you my shot of the eagle while you're filling us in on what's going on. I got one shot. It was an eagle in a tree. I don't think you're gonna love it, but
I'm sure you got nice pictures of glaciers and ice sculptures.
Thank you. Yeah, right.
Right.
Yes.
The stuff that you could normally get with a phone. But anyway, as far as what's going on Monday, Apple stages its annual developer conference called WWDC, Worldwide Developers Conference. That's where they introduce the new software updates for the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple Watch and all the stuff like that. But the iPhone is the main attraction there. And so in June, they give us a sneak peek of what the new iPhone is going to look like because they make changes to the operating system and it's mostly software. So the scuttlebutt this year is that there's going to be a redesign. Your apps are going to look different. They're going to be in a different place. There's going to be new buttons. There's going to be a lot of confusion. They won't sell it like that, but people are going to say, oh, wait a minute, that's not how I always did it. And one feature that is supposedly going to be introduced that I think will be really great, when you plug in your phone, there's going to be a marker that says, this is how long it will take to charge your phone up.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? We like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm unclear on the confusing part. You're saying that the update is going to produce all of this kind of a different look. Is that what you're saying?
The apps will look different. There'll be new icons. They'll be in different places. They'll have different shapes. They'll be when they do these things, they don't tell you about them, basically. So you're on your own figuring out, well, wait a minute. I used to do something this way. Now I have to do it that way. Tends to be a lot of confusion over the summer when this stuff comes out. For instance, live photos used to have something on this side, then it moved it to that side. So I'll be busy telling people how to do it the new way. last year, the big announcement was artificial intelligence. We're adding AI features to the iPhone. It's going to be great. We're going to compete with Google. We're going to compete with ChatGPT. And as most people know, it was a dud. They released a new phone and they didn't have the features ready. They didn't even come out for several months. And some of the features they announced last June have yet to come out, like the all-new, chattier, smarter Siri. It's still the same old Siri.
Chattier, no matter how you apply that description, makes it sound like something I don't want. But the AI, just because AI is so much of the moment, and we see sort of the downside of AI and how AI is, I think the AI pieces that have been written, some of them like in Wired and some of them sort of deep dives. I think I read a big one in Rolling Stone. New York Times has covered it nationally as well. The idea somehow that AI has now reached a point at which engineers are having to figure ways to make sure the AI doesn't defeat the goal of the of whatever experiment and whatever development they're working on. The AI has, as you know, and I know you've read a lot of these same pieces, AI's various abilities to realize what's going on, how it will actively avoid efforts to disconnect itself. It will also cheat in chess, as you know. It will cheat on an exam associated with mathematics. I mean, it's a remarkable thing that AI has taken on a lot of these less than laudable qualities and sort of uncontrollable qualities. First of all, you've seen all of that, right? I mean, this is the state of things now.
But for an iPhone, it's about how do I make a call easier? How do I slog through my email easier? It's all consumer things. The one thing they introduced that I really liked was voice memos, where they transcribe everything you record like that. And I say it's at like 99%. And I use it all day long. I don't know if you've used it, Mark. I mean, we're both in the business where we record our voice and we need a transcript. So that works really well. And that's
and I'm glad you skipped to that, because that's kind of what I was getting at, is that even though we hear all these horror stories about AI, the reality is from a consumer standpoint, AI is only improving, I suppose, the functionality of the iPhone and the Android.
Yeah, and looking up things, I tend to go to ChatGPT now about half of the time because I know I'll get an answer. Half of the time being in Google, being the other half. I know I'll actually get an answer, and I can keep the conversation going without having to say, "What's the weather like in Austin, Texas today?" Okay, well, fine. Well, it'll be on Wednesday or next week. You don't have to repeat Austin, Texas. They just know what you're thinking and know what you're doing. And they know what you're interested in. So every question I ask turns into, Austin would be a great place for a photo walk, Oh, can we recommend some photo tips for you? Places to photograph in Austin? You do a really good job there, Jeff. I think that'd be a fantastic place.
Tony, show Jeff I sent you some pics from Alaska, and Tony's going to share them with you. You'll see that they're sort of kind of low rent. They were not, it wasn't a photography mission. You know what I mean? I was just there to kind of remind me of where I was. I take these pictures. So that's not a bad picture.
That's a nice shot.
Setting sun. Yeah, that was, Tony generously is leading with the best shot.
I don't see.
Well,
I don't
see the reflection of your hand in it.
How dare you, Tony? How dare you even know?
Your hand and your eye.
That was one of the worst ones.
Oh my God, you guys are really.
I just can't see the eagle. Where's the eagle?
I did.
Thanks, Tony.
How dare you?
Have you not been paying attention to Jefferson Graham the whole time? He's given us tips on how to take pictures.
Oh, you know what? This is a very bad idea. I can see you guys are
wait,
just
I found a
incredibly
better
critical.
one.
Yeah.
You can't see. Oh wait, take off the banner.
If you lose the banner, you can. You
can see just heads right there at the bottom.
Oh yeah, you're right. There is a head there. That was right. I got a little reckless with that. I'm looking for the eagle picture. I couldn't find. I'll find it for tomorrow. For those of you who are swinging back around, there is an eagle picture. But there's there's kind of the glacier movement that's shot across a lake, an Alaskan lake. It's really kind of cool. It might fall into the category of you had to be there.
No, I think these are great.
There you go.
These are good. These are what most people would be expecting to take in Alaska on a phone if they weren't bringing the big honking heavy camera.
Exactly. So that's kind of where we are, what we had.
I mean, think about it. Did you really want to walk around with a big camera all day?
No, it is an encumbrance because you walk around with the camera and the lens and then stuff like a battery, and you got a little camera bag in it, but it takes its toll. You can't get it wet, this kind of thing. There's a lot of stuff that we were doing, in between these kind of nature walks out there on the water. And you, that's Courtney. I thought you'd appreciate a picture of her. And D. Elliott says, okay, so Mark is great at a lot of things. Taking pictures isn't one of them. Wow.
What?
Man, it is a tough room here. It is a tough room. Yeah. But I can't find the eagle. The picture.
Let's see.
Oh, wait a minute. I did find it. Hang on.
How about some super chat for Mark? What do you say? He's being a really good sport today.
Thank you for the pitch, Jefferson Graham. I'm going to send this to you now, Tony. These are the pictures of the eagle, and you'll see why I was reluctant to send them. But it's tricky. It's tricky. So I just want to go back to the developers conference for a second. Was any note made as to the cost of the iPhone and how that may now, if there are existing tariffs that are allowed to remain in place, start to
developer conference? Developer conference is on Monday, and that's when Apple will reveal all.
Oh, I see. It's on Monday.
My bet is no mention of price whatsoever. No mention of Trump. No mention of tariffs. Just it's going to be a great year for all of us.
I see. It's a preview of the developers. Sorry, I was looking at my picks while you were speaking. I missed that part. Harry, thank you. He says, Harry Magnan with a $5 super chat says, some of us like your picks. So there you go. Thank you, Harry. Well, wait till you see the picture of the eagle, which was sitting in a tree and sort of, there it is. Can you see the eagle?
Okay. All right.
That's actually pretty good. I really like that picture.
That's a bald eagle, right? Yeah. There you go. Thank you very much, Kim. Yeah. So
Kim, how are you?
That is I thought that was cool to see it. I mean, again, it reminds me of seeing it, but it's not it's not a classic wildlife shot. You're waiting. You can see that there's a stick in the foreground. There's a branch in the foreground. It's sort of blocked.
Quick eagle story from a cousin that lives in Alaska that has bald eagles that circle around her neighborhood. She says she can't let her 1-year-old play outside in the backyard because they're worried that the bald eagles will swoop down and take their baby.
Wow.
That was interesting. Differences from being an Alaska mom than a Petaluma mom.
Yeah, they are huge. I mean, and they've got those talents. What is this, Jeff? True Tech says enable optimization. What does that mean?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I'm not sure what that's.
I mean, I think enable
optimization. Is that an adjustment on the iPhone? I guess is what I'm asking.
No, it's usually you're talking about motion.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, I don't know that button, and I pretty much know all the menu items.
Millie says, if you want good eagle pictures in Alaska, go to the rehabilitation centers. They sit there still for their picture. Well, I was trying to get one out in the wild. I understand. If you really want good pictures, go to the zoo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sit there still. No, I understand your rehab center point, though, Millie. It's not a bad one, but I was trying to get one out. Now, this is the Eagle Cam in Southern California in Big Bear. Is that where this is? Or is this in Alaska?
No, this is the Big Bear one.
Yeah, the Big Bear eagle story is really something in Southern California about the eaglets, and this is a great thing. I love that this technology exists, and you can monitor the nest. One of the eaglets has left the nest, and now there's just one eaglet left behind. And so you actually saw the moment. It was 10:45 yesterday, right before we went on the air, that the first eaglet left that nest. And that was all made possible, that knowledge and those pictures, by the technology where you can put a camera up there.
Can I a quick little live webcam story? So when I was on Route 66, I was in a location which I won't mention, and I pulled out my drone and I read a sign. It said no drones. And I said, they'll never know. I'm just going to go up and down and blah, blah, blah. So, and it was fine. Nobody said a word to me. I was all good. And then I checked out their website. No, I was not on it. But they did have a live webcam with a 24-hour view, which made me realize I was photographed when I did this, wasn't I?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch it. The surveillance state is rising. Find Jefferson Graham on YouTube, Photo Walks TV, here on Tuesdays, knocking around with us, sharing some information. You're going to give us chapter and verse on the Developers Conference, which is Monday, from what I understand.
Yes.
All
So
right.
I'll fill you in next week. And on Photo Walks this week, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
Route 66 from Tulsa to Texas.
Where the wind comes right behind the Oklahoma, where the wind comes right
The Sooner
behind.
State, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Chandler, Stroud, Oklahoma, which was one of my favorite places to go to. That's where I had the oatmeal pie with the Klondike bar on top of it.
Oh, yeah. Oklahoma, where the wind comes right behind the rain, is it? What is it?
Sweeping down the plains.
Sweeping down the plains. Thank you, Kim. God, what the hell's wrong with you people?
You guys know your Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Well, I mean, it's a classic musical. You should know it, too. How dare you not know it
Well,
when you
I
did
don't
a
know-
whole thing?
I know the
From
song.
Oklahoma.
I know. Oh, What a Beautiful Morning. The Surrey with the
Thank
fringe
you.
on
All right, I'll
top.
give you
Okay?
some credit for "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning." All right.
Oh, What a Beautiful Day.
Yeah, I've got a beautiful feeling that everything's going what?
My way.
All right, there you go. All right, I have partial credit.
What father of a great rock star sang that song?
Oh, Bonnie Raitt's dad was the Broadway star. Yeah.
John Raitt. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. He's the one who made Oklahoma famous on Broadway. And I'll give you credit for that too. Very, very, very impressive. Good trivia. Find Jefferson Graham across.
He was also in Carousel.
Oh no, he was a huge Broadway star. I mean, she grew up the daughter of a massive star on Broadway. And again, now you know Oklahoma, where the wind comes what? Sweeping down the what? Plain is the answer we were looking for. All right. Jefferson Graham, thank you. We'll find you on Photo Walks TV and here next week. Thank you, my friend.
You.
All right. Until next time. That's great.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim, very strong in a musical family, musical household. I would expect that you would know that. That's a classic song.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch Oklahoma, and I wouldn't imagine that anybody would have reason necessarily to watch Oklahoma, except that it is a classic. There is this character. Is it Judd or Jed? Judd, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And they talk about, he's not liked. He's a problem guy. Excuse me. Judd Fry. But when you actually watch it now in the wisdom of the years, looking back, Judd was actually a good guy, misunderstood. He was an outcast, Kim. And sort of in his outcastness, it was sad. There's a certain sadness about Judd Fry.
The first time I ever saw that play was at the mountain play. They do every year, right around my birthday, they do a mountain play on Mount Tamalpais in Marin County.
Oh, wow.
You have to take these buses up to an outdoor amphitheater that was built by the Youth Conservation Corps way back when. And it's these seats, these rock seats that are like, carved out of rock. And it's this outdoor, right, surrounded by a beautiful forest and trees, and you could kind of in some spots see the ocean in the distance. It's gorgeous out there.
What a wonderful place
Yeah.
to see it, man. Rev P says, I was in Annie, Get Your Gun.
Hey.
Wow, look at you, Rev.
Nice.
I was in the Fantastics, Rev. And I'll tell you
like that.
something about that.
Beautiful show.
I was the lead in the Fantastics, and I played opposite a woman who went on to Broadway, the original cast of Les Miserables. All right? Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Are you a singer? You have a good voice?
Please. I can't believe it. Tony, how can she...
Do you know who I am?
I can't...
I'm kind of a big deal.
How do people not know my history?
I know you're a dancer. I didn't know you were a singer.
I'm not a dancer. I'm a dancer on TV with stupid dances. But
You got rhythm. You got
I
some
always
moves.
felt like she went on to Broadway. And she was big on Broadway. In Les Mis, the original cast. She's on the original cast album. Then she went into a bunch of other shows.
Sure.
She's brilliant, great performer. And I played opposite her. I feel as though there was a Broadway career in me, Kim. And still,
Probably.
yeah.
I think you
Anyway.
really could have done anything.
Thank you. I need more of that. Why isn't there more of that?
And look how it ended up.
The
See, this is great.
Fantastics.
Yeah.
It ended up with me having eschewed the Broadway career to come here to YouTube to talk politics and news and to beg you for support. That is what I am about now. And speaking of that, Lucy McAllister, $19.99. I call it $20. There is a big shout out for my favorite McAllister.
Big shout out.
If Lucy could only read news, we could totally replace Kim. Imagine. With another McAllister, which is the only way I would replace her.
I'll train you, Lucy. You can be my fill-in for now.
Yeah,
until you swoop in and take over.
There, you never know. Things change quickly in this business. Jim Eaton says, with a $5 super chat, CEO's pay increased 10%. The only pay increase. Trump Barbie was taking credit for all the wages increasing in the press conferences today. Oh, is that right?
Mm.
That's just I don't know. Truth has left the building at the White House. Tony, we posted that already. Thank you. He answered that question about Trump. And so Elwin, with one of the coolest names on the show, Elwin says, hello, everyone. Finally getting to see the MTS show live. Very, very cool. Glad you are here, Elwin. Again, you continue to have one of the coolest names. And we love names. So I appreciate everybody who's donated. By the way, if a couple of people I saw in the chat are looking to send checks to the show, don't want to do the internet thing. Of course, there are hot links to Patreon and PayPal, but if you're more of a check person, send me an email, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com, and I will send you back the address where you can send a check if that's your thing. I do a star in Smash the Like button, CC Ryder says.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Yeah, my new show, Smash the Like button, will open soon. Yeah, very, very good. I'm excited about Kim's After Party Live show, which she does over on the After Party Live channel.
We're going to talk more about the Flying Eagles.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Tomorrow on the show, Kim, tell everyone what we've got. It is
John
a big
Rothman
show.
Comes through. John Rothman will be on tomorrow's Mark Thompson show. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It really is.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think there is something else happening that I thought you might be aware of, but let me see if I'm aware of it. There's more than just...
Wendy Holden will be on the show.
Yeah, all right.
Mm-hmm. She's the teacher of Auschwitz, I believe. Or maybe we're recording with her. I'm not sure. Anyway.
I think we're... No, I don't know if we're recording... I've also got Nathan Taylor on All About the Elections. That's coming up later this week. June Carbone and Bill Black on the underground economy. All of that and more.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
So we've got a pretty packed week. Even we can't keep track of it. That's how packed it is.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Kim. Thank you all. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.